Welcome into Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Coming up a little bit later, we're going to be joined by Kinnamon of Dog Pound Daily, breaking down the Browns. But we're also going to be joined by Quincy as well. YouTube personality, does great work as well. So we're going to be talking with him in just a bit. But we start with CBS Sports, where, again, unfinished business throughout this offseason, and shockingly, we're talking about the Deshaun Watson situation here. As it says in here, the ruling from disciplinary officer Sue L. Robinson, retired district court judge, could come at any time, but it's expected before the opening of training camp there on the 27th, and it seems like now that you have those briefs filed, now it's up to Robinson to sort through those briefings and to go through and make her verdict, whether or not a decision could come down for a punishment for Deshaun Watson, and how much could that be if she does think that he does get that suspension. But that doesn't stop Deshaun Watson from coming back into Cleveland as well, as it seems that Deshaun Watson taking in the sights of downtown Cleveland as well. Yesterday, we saw him posting in Berea. Last night, we got a chance to go ahead and see that Deshaun Watson was at the Cleveland Guardians game, taking in the action. Guardians, unfortunately, not able to get the win there, but Deshaun Watson able to take in the sights and be able to check out downtown Cleveland as well. But with Deshaun Watson getting ready for training camp, seems like he's ready to go. In order to talk about that, let's bring in Quincy, YouTube personality. Always love talking with Quincy. And Quincy, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, seems like he's ready to go. Obviously you have that suspension looming, but it seems like he's ready to go when it comes to training camp opening up here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, like the dissonance thing with Deshaun Watson is like there's what you know about him, well, allegedly about him based on this whole situation he's dealing with. And then there's also what he's always done throughout his career, which has been like the ultimate pro. So it's like an interesting contrast here because, you know, Deshaun's always going to be early. Deshaun's going to be one of the first people to show up. Deshaun's going to be a presence in the city that he plays in, and he's going to try to support all the local stuff that he does because he's really good at that kind of stuff, right? The quote-unquote adult in the room stuff he does very well. So seems like he's preparing as if he's going to have a full training camp. I have no idea what the suspension is going to be. I think nobody knows other than maybe Sue Robinson and maybe Roger Goodell have some idea. But other than that, I don't know who actually knows at this point. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this looms over camp because I don't think as the days go on, I don't think it's likely that we get a ruling before training camp. I think we're probably going to have this drag on at least until before the first preseason game, if not even longer than that, because it just seems like this has at every step of the way has taken much longer than everybody's expected. So it would be kind of weird for this to be the thing that gets out on time when it doesn't look like it's on track.
Well, and with that being said, too, you know, this is also the first case where we've seen Sue Robinson and having this disciplinary officer kind of oversee this entire process. So, you know, it's even more important, not just because of the magnitude of this kind of an implication and this kind of a ruling, but also because this is the first one that we've seen from Judge Sue Robinson.
Yeah, and it's a new process. And also one thing I always bring up when you talk about the NFL, the reason, because they did not have to agree to this in the CBA, right? They gave the NFLPA something in this last kind of bargaining agreement, but they did not have to agree to this. One of the reasons they agreed to this is because this is a beneficial thing for the NFL, where the NFL was kind of tired of getting the bad press of being the only person in charge of who gets suspended, right? Roger Goodell has been criticized for almost every suspension that has come out since the Ray Rice incident, since Pac-Man Jones, right? When they first put in this rule with the exempt list. So now that they can have some kind of separation of it, they can kind of put their hands up if a suspension doesn't please the general public or some parts of the general public, where they can say, hey, look, we brought in an arbitrator. She's a judge. This is what she decided that she felt like was fair. We're going to abide by that. So they have some distance from whatever the suspension is. So it's not all on their hands. So I expect them to follow this process and to follow this arbitration process just because it benefits them too, to not make it seem like they have all of the control over this situation, because when you have all the control, you're going to take all the blame if people don't feel like it's fair.
Now, let's go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, because we had one caller who had an interesting angle of what the Watson team could be kind of aiming for in these briefings to Judge Sue Robinson.
I want to comment on the suspension that's looming over Deshaun Watson. I feel as though when it comes down to the suspension of Deshaun Watson, if the owners is own up to a higher standard than a player, that there was similar situations, and these owners didn't get suspended, fined, lose job picks, anything, how can they find grounds to even suspend him for a season when there's nothing happened to these owners? Thank you for taking this call.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point brought up by them, because again, it says in the collective bargaining agreement and in that personal conduct policy specifically that everyone, and that is bold, underlined, making sure that every single person, whether it be owner, player, whoever, is held to that same standard, and especially the owners. The NFL has even said owners are held to a higher standard. So, Quincy, at that point, you got to think that Watson's team is kind of looking at that and saying to Judge Robinson, if Daniel Snyder is off on a boat and avoiding Congress and all of their subpoenas, what are we doing when it comes to this Watson treatment here?
Yeah, and this is why there being an arbitrator is something that has been seen as favorable for the Cleveland Browns, right? Well, not the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson. So when in the past you would have an argument like that, which would be a fair argument of, hey, this is hypocrisy. Like, you're literally not applying this rule to people who should be applied the rule under. It just wouldn't matter because the commissioner is making the decision and Raj has a job. And that job is also to service the 32 NFL owners, right? He's not in charge of them. They're kind of in charge of him. They set the rules for him. So he would not be able to apply it like that or, really consider that. But a judge, somebody who's not within the NFL structure, can look at that and go, okay, well, if you're not going to do anything for these situations, and I don't find it fair for you to throw the book at this player for this situation, given that this is supposed to be for everybody, because again, it's an outside arbitration. So they're going to look at this rule, see how it was applied fairly within that workplace, and then determine what the punishment should be from there. So that is something that's going to help them. Because of the NFL, clearly we kind of know why they would not apply that to owners, just because they're always going to be more hesitant to apply punishment to owners, just because owners vote on that punishment to themselves and they don't want to open up any doors that they could potentially fall through either. And that's how that is. But with the arbitrator there, it's going to make it that they can point out those things and maybe have some leniency applied to the players in these situations, if that's the case.
Now, in other Browns news, yesterday we saw a report from Tyler Dragon of USA Today, who had said the Browns were one of the teams that were interested in Ndamukong Suh, defensive tackle, still free agent sitting out there. And that report was refuted not only by Brad Stainbrook of the Orange and Brown Report, but also by Mary Kay Cabot of cleveland.com, who had said that she has written several times this offseason the Browns are not interested in Ndamukong Suh and nothing has changed. But Quincy, I want to ask you, do you think that the Browns, even as we kind of head towards training camp, do you think that there's any chance that they get involved in these kind of negotiations? And at the same time, do you also think that this could be, a negotiation ploy from, Ndamukong Suh's camp? Because it seems like the Raiders and the Vikings are both in on Suh. So could this be a ploy from his camp to go ahead and get some more money in these negotiations?
I think they're trying to create leverage, by the way. Mary Kay with the classic, I don't know how many times I got to tell y'all, like line in there. But yeah, I don't think the Browns are interested when it makes sense. From the outside looking in, if you don't know much about the Browns and how they're trying to run this defense, then I could see where you can make them seem like a credible interested party to another team, because they don't have that very many defensive tackles. But I just don't think the Browns are very interested in Ndamukong Suh. If you look at what he put out last year, I mean, this is a guy going on to 36, and he's been in steep decline since about 2018. You talk about Pro Football Focus grade that 5 years ago was at 90, has decreased a year from 80 to 70 to 60. It's already all the way down to 50. So you're talking about a player who looks like he's in steady decline. He's going to be 36 by the time the season starts. And that just doesn't sound like an Andrew Berry move at all, right? Andrew Berry usually doesn't go over 32, right? I think that's the oldest free agent he's signed is like 32 for a major position on the team. And he also likes to give the young players a chance in some of these positions where he doesn't prioritize very much. And I think that's probably the direction in which they're going to go with defensive tackle. And Ndamukong Suh would sound nice. He's a big name. I just don't know if that's the big name the Browns would want.
Look, Browns fans, we've already seen this time and time again. We went through it before, Browns started winning again. Teams will use the Browns for leverage. It does happen still. Even when you're winning, they can still use you for leverage. But again, we'll go ahead and leave that there. But when we come back, Quincy Carrier and I going to talk about Baker Mayfield, his former coach, what he had to say about the Browns quarterback, as well as who needs to rebound in 2022. Again, Mac Robinson in for Dave Bacon here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Earlier today, Freddie Kitchens, former Cleveland Browns head coach and offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, spoke about Baker Mayfield, who was recently traded to the Carolina Panthers, his time in Cleveland, as well as what he expects from Baker in Carolina.
In the game of football, when you start talking about players, you're either dealing with projections or quantitative things that they've already done. And when you look at Baker, like you mentioned, he finished second in the league in Rookie of the Year votes. He set a rookie touchdown record his rookie year. The second year, he had 2,000-yard receivers, 1,500-yard rusher. His third year, his receivers were back healthy, and he had a better year, a much better year statistically for him and record-wise. And then the fourth year, like you mentioned, the labrum. And I know from experience, the off shoulder is sometimes more important than the on shoulder as far as controlling accuracy of the ball and things like that. I think that definitely impacted him. And I'm excited for him to get to Carolina and see what he can do. I think things are looking up for Baker.
Now, I would say this. I love Freddie Kitchens and the sound bites that he was able to produce, at least in Cleveland. But it felt a little bit revisionist history to me because, again, that second year, just kind of summing it up as, you had a 1,500-yard rusher, you had 2,000-yard receivers. You're missing a lot of the context in there and the fact that Baker was very high up in the league when it came to interceptions. And to talk about that, we bring in Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality, does a great job as well. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe. But, Quincy, I got to ask you, man, it felt a little bit revisionist history when it came to Freddie Kitchens, kind of summarizing that time from Baker.
I mean, it was revisionist in the way of purposely leaving out stuff, right? Like, you're going to leave out that he was second only to Jameis, who threw 30 interceptions that year in the NFL when it came to that. There was a lot of bad sacks taken. I mean, like, the 2019 tape is bad. We know it's bad. I know there's been an effort by some to make it seem like the 2019 season was not as bad as everybody seems. It was bad. I lived it. I watched through it. I actually had season tickets that year. I lived it. Like,
I'm sorry.
It was as bad as everybody says it was. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Look, I understand why Freddie's going to take that angle from it because he needs to protect his own reputation. In the same way, Baker's probably going to take that angle from it. I wish the best for both of those guys. I'm not going to wish ill on them. But, also, we know when the Browns went to play the Giants and Freddie Kitchens was calling plays, had no fear about that. And we'll see what happens in week 1 against Panthers.
Now, jumping off that, the 33rd team, again, great website, they had 10 players who need to rebound in 2022. And they had Baker Mayfield in here. And they said, their verdict, again, he had a tumultuous offseason. And now he has Ben McAdoo, who wasn't a big fan of Baker coming out of college. And he was critical about his measurables and overall athleticism. And their verdict for Baker Mayfield in 2022 is that he is going to fall flat with the Carolina Panthers. Now, Quincy, I know it's a new situation for Baker. I know that, at least as of right now, he's still battling for that starting position, that starting quarterback position in Carolina. I know you did a lot of coverage on this. What are your expectations when it comes to Baker? And do you think he's going to be able to bounce back, or does he fall flat in 2022?
I thought this was probably the worst situation for him, right? To go to Carolina where it's debatable whether they actually believe in him or not. I think there is a section of people who believe this is probably their best chance to win. I also think there's a section of people in that organization that feel like getting Baker Mayfield was probably the best chance to sell some tickets. Let's not forget, this is business. Teams do make decisions to go 500 because 500 sells more tickets than like 2 wins. And a team like Carolina has had a history of doing that kind of thing where they want to make a profit with their football team. So I just don't know. It sounds messy to me, right? Like, it's not like a team that believed in Baker unilaterally traded for him and are going to go through the ups and downs with him. We know with Baker that if you're not going to be committed to him 100% through all the ups and all the downs, he tends to not handle that well. We've seen that here in Cleveland with how he's reacted to fans booing the offense during the year, right? He's not had a great reaction to that. And now he's in a situation where Ben McAdoo thought he was worse, the 6th best quarterback prospect in 2018. So behind Mason Rudolph, he's in a situation with Matt Rule that's straight up volatile. If you ever have read any reports coming out of Carolina about Matt Rule and how he interacts with certain people, it just doesn't seem like that great of a situation for him. And then the question begs you on to this, right? Because everything about Baker Mayfield, and the only reason people have a lot of hope for him, is they've blamed all the bad stuff on everything else, right, at this point. And to a certain point, you get to do that, right? But 2019, it was the coach. 2021, it was, it was the shoulder. What if he's healthy, goes in here, the situation's a mess, right? Like, we can all look at Carolina and say, hey, they got some good players, but their situation kind of looks like a mess with the Matt Rule thing. And what if that becomes such a mess that he has a bad year, even though he's healthy? Then people are going to go, well, there's always something with you, right? 3 years, always something, got to go. Right. And he's not somebody that teams really believe can be a backup. And that's where, if I was Baker, if I were making decisions or an advisor to Baker Mayfield, I would have strongly suggested that you do whatever you could to work out a release with the Cleveland Browns on whatever you had to eat to make that happen, so you can go somewhere like a Tampa Bay and rehab your image to NFL front offices by being a backup for a year, and then coming out after that, after showing people that, hey, I can be a backup, because now you have a safety net if your next starting job doesn't work out. But now you're in a situation where, hey, if you ball in Carolina, you're probably going to get paid. Good on you. But if you don't, I don't know who's going to be so eager to bring him in to be a backup if they view his personality as a volatile one. Like there's not a lot of quarterbacks who are backups that teams feel like have volatile personalities despite their talent. Remember, Terrell Pryor had to switch to wide receiver because nobody thought that he could really handle being a backup from a maturity standpoint. So that's the kind of thing that, hey, if you can start, you can get away with. But the second they don't think you're a starter and they still feel like you're like that, that's how a very talented player ends up out the league much faster than they anticipate.
Now, on that same list from the 33rd team, they also had Cleveland Browns offensive tackle Jack Conklin, who, again, had some injuries throughout the season, ended up getting first-team All-Pro honors in 2020 there, but ended up having a couple of different injuries that ended up ending his season. They have him bouncing back in 2022. So, Quincy, for you, when it comes to Jack Conklin and even Jedrick Wills, dealing with injuries, throughout 2021 as well, how comfortable are you with the bookend tackles there on the offensive line because of that injury history from those two?
I'm fairly comfortable because I think James Hudson's going to be ready to step up if he needs to play on that right side. Now, I don't know about the left side. I hope Jedrick can just be healthy this year. You're going to have to kind of cross your fingers on that. But Jack, you kind of know that at some point he's going to probably miss a game or two at the very least. So you have to anticipate for that. I think James Hudson is fine there. You also have Chris Hubbard who can slide around, and we'll see what kind of shape he's in. Well, not shape, but what kind of state he's in after his injuries. He had like 2 season-ending injuries in a row. So we'll see how he looks in camp. But if you have Chris Hubbard, who's your swing guy, he can play both sides, and then you have James Hudson back there, your depth is bigger. I think a lot of what happened last year where the tackle depth seemed so poor was that Chris Hubbard got hurt in training camp. And that was a lot of your backup positions right there. James Hudson was not ready to come in at the beginning of the year. So now you were down to Michael Dunn and Blake Hance out here playing left tackle, right tackle. And that was just an issue for this team. So I think now that they have a healthy Chris Hubbard back, they have James Hudson who's ready. I think it's a lot more likely that they can get more out the backup position if they have to go there. Fingers crossed that they don't.
Now, with the offensive line, obviously, it's a strength of the team, and we're waiting to see how they play out this year. Warren Sharp, again, great football mind. He had this tweet out that the best offensive lines in 2022, number 5, Tampa Bay, then Detroit, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Cleveland sitting at number 1 going into 2022. And I think even without, J.C. Treader, who, again, was released this offseason, now you have Nick Harris stepping up at that center position. Seems like the Browns are having no drop-offs when it comes to that spot.
Yeah. I think they're pretty confident in Nick Harris being able to hold his own, especially between 2 of the best guards in football. Jedrick Wills going into his 3rd year, and let's not forget the 3rd year for our offensive linemen is a critical year, right, where they kind of come into their own most of the time. Because they have those extra years of weight training and then they get used to the NFL. Remember how Wyatt Teller was kind of a footnote in 2019 and then 2020 became one of the best guards in football in his 3rd year as a professional. So Jedrick going into his 3rd year, we should hopefully see a jump from him. And then you have other young players that will be willing to step up if they have to. But yeah, I think this Browns offensive line is going to be pretty solid. There's no reason to believe they're not. I think they did a lot to bolster the depth if there are any injuries. And even at center, right, they have a backup ready for there in Ethan Pocknick. So I think they've done a really good job assembling this offensive line.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, Deshaun Watson obviously didn't play in 2021. How rusty is he going to be? And who are some secret weapons to keep an eye out for in the preseason for 2022? Again, Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. We're going to be joined by Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality. And, you know, Cleveland Browns obviously add in Deshaun Watson this offseason. Didn't play in 2021. Obviously still dealing with, you know, the legal situation going on with the accusers as well. So miss out in 2021. That leads to the question of how rusty does Deshaun Watson get? And to break that all down, let's bring in Quincy Carrier to break that all down. Now, Quincy, I know you have a YouTube video up of that as well, so make sure you guys go ahead, check out his YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe there as well after you get done watching the live show here today. But Quincy, you know, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, what are your expectations for him? Seeing as, you know, he's already back in Berea in Cleveland, you know, at the Guardians game last night. How rusty do you think he's going to be when it comes to, you know, when he gets onto the field?
Yeah, I really don't think, unless the suspension is like 3 months or something like that, and he has to wait 3 months from camp to play, I don't anticipate him to be extremely rusty, right? There is a possibility, well, the Browns' Thursday night game is week 3, so I don't even think that's, like, if he came back on a short week, maybe I could see that, but I don't think he's going to be all that rusty because he was still practicing last year. You know, he wasn't suspended, so he was still with the team to some extent last year. And then also he's been practicing throughout this whole offseason program. He's going to get preseason snaps if he's not suspended indefinitely. And he's going to be able to do that. And also, like, you know, Deshaun's been playing quarterback at a very high level for what, 4 years at Clemson. He's been in the league like 4 years at this point, 8 years, on top of all the other times we play football. If you've done something like that for that long, I mean, he's been playing football more than he's been almost as long as he's been like a person with memories, then it's going to come back to him pretty fast, right? Like the rust is going to shake off pretty fast. Like if he plays a bad game in his third game back, I'm not going to blame that one on rust. I just think he played a bad game. You know what I mean? Like I think he'll be all right when it comes to the rust factor. I think we kind of overestimate them things. You know, I don't know what other people do. Some people swim, some people ride bikes. I swim and ride bikes a lot, right? And I know that it's real easy if I haven't swam in a while. Like the first couple laps stink, but then by the time I get to the third or fourth one, I'm back to knowing how to swim again. So, you know, it's just one of those things. If you've done it a long time, you'll be able to get back to it, you know, because it's just muscle memory at that point. And your muscles do remember a lot more than what people assume.
Yeah, just like riding a bike. You know, and Quincy, when it comes to, you know, Watson in this offense especially, like you said, you know, if there's not much rust, you know, what expectations do you then have on some of those wide receivers as well? Because, again, you don't necessarily have the proven talent, the proven names outside of Amari Cooper at this point. So, you know, what do you kind of expect for the David Bells and the Anthony Schwartzes, you know, in that wide receiver room if Watson's able to, you know, come back to form pretty quickly?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what you could squeeze out of these guys at this point in their career. You know, this year with Deshaun, if he comes in during some point in the season, just because, you know, I'm interested to see, especially with Anthony Schwartz, what is actually there with Anthony Schwartz and what was there that we didn't see because of the quarterback situation last year, right? If you look at his targets, drastically low when Baker Mayfield's out there versus when like a Case Keenum or Garrett Gilbert was out there. So if that changes, that tells me that situation was more about Baker not liking something in particular about Anthony Schwartz, versus the latter there, where it was Anthony Schwartz that was having a problem, right? And I know the Browns have a lot invested in Anthony Schwartz and have a lot of hopes for him. So, yeah, Anthony Schwartz is going to be somebody interesting. David Bell, I think David Bell is going to be good, regardless of who you put out there. But Anthony Schwartz, I want to see, is there something in there? Is there some Will Fuller in him that they can unlock with him that wasn't unlocked last year because there was just some kind of friction with the quarterback situation?
Now, once we get around this time in training camp and in preseason, we always see these darlings and these secret weapons that'll pop up, and fans will kind of get their eyes on at this point. Who are some guys that you see as some secret weapons to kind of keep an eye out for, in this preseason?
Perrion Winfrey. But Perrion Winfrey would be one of these guys I think is going to be a secret weapon to look out for. But AJ Green III is somebody I really want to focus on because I don't think a lot of people talk about him. He was really good in the selective snaps that he had last year. Now, he didn't have enough to qualify for Pro Football Focus rankings, but he did have an 86 on Pro Football Focus, which is pretty high up there when it comes to a cornerback ranking. I think it was probably the highest on the team. Again, small sample size, but he's somebody who puts other players in an interesting position because we know that Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome are going to be your top two corners. Wherever you put them on the field, they're going to be your top two guys. They're going to be the best two corners that you have. But now you're in a situation where, okay, who's 3, 4, and who's the slot, right? And now I think AJ Green's probably 3. You drafted MJ Emerson, so he's probably going to be in the competition for the slot or the other boundary position. And then you ask yourself, well, where does Greedy Williams fit into all of this, right? And I don't know where Greedy fits into this because he looks like somebody who doesn't really have a position at this point. So, yeah, I think AJ Green III is somebody to watch in camp because he did show an impressive sample last year. And if he can come out here in camp and impress and turn a lot of heads this offseason, then that's going to look like something that, a small sample that could actually stretch out and be indicative of a better player there than what we thought with the undrafted free agent. But he's somebody that's steadily been moving up the depth chart. I think he's ready to get to the point where I think people start to notice that he's been moving up that depth chart. I think AJ Green III is somebody to definitely look out for.
Well, and AJ Green III, you mentioned undrafted free agent. He was that top billed undrafted free agent that they spent a lot of money on to bring him in after the 2020 draft. But also ESPN, we've been keeping an eye out here for it. They have their top 10 tight ends in the NFL. They've been releasing these top 10 series. And David Njoku is an honorable mention, not top 10 tight end quite yet, even though they did extend him for the 4 years, $54.75 million for the extension this offseason. And NFC offensive coach mentioned in there as well. Great size, speed, and has gotten better as a blocker. I've just never trusted his hands. Now, it's important to remember the fact that David Njoku, over the last 2 seasons, in 82 targets, has 3 drops. 3 drops. So David Njoku, I think, has more of a stigma when it comes to the drop passes that has kind of lingered since he got into the league, but I almost feel like it's almost time to drop that stigma at this point.
Yeah, if he doesn't have a ton of drops this year, at that point, it would be ridiculous to keep saying David Njoku has drops. I get why. It was, 2020, he didn't have that many drops. 2019, he didn't, but he barely played in 2019. And then last year, he didn't have many drops at all. He was actually the most consistent receiver that the Browns had when it came to drop percentage. So, David Njoku, he's in a great position to kind of blossom to a lot of people because the team could be better. He could be a much more dominant threat in the red zone with a better quarterback. And he does have the great size and speed profile, and he's caught up as a blocker to the point to where he is not even close to a liability. He's actually a plus out there. So, yeah, I think David Njoku is somebody to look out for this year too.
Quincy Carey and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, where the Browns end up fitting in the AFC North predictions, as well as how do the Browns fix their weaknesses. Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and we have the offseason still going on. Deshaun Watson, obviously, we're still up in the air on how long the potential suspension could be for him, but that doesn't stop the rest of the NFL for putting out their predictions for who could win the division. In the AFC North, according to Bleacher Report, it's going to be going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, out of the 5 votes, 3 of them went to the Cincinnati Bengals. Another 2 votes went over to the Baltimore Ravens. And to break this all down, let's bring in Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality, covers the Browns. And Quincy, I got to ask you, when it comes to this division, I understand that, Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl last year. The Ravens are always, a top-billed organization. But at the same time, the roster really hasn't changed all that much. And if the Browns have competent quarterback play and consistent quarterback play, even without Deshaun Watson, it feels like this is a much better team in 2022.
Yeah, I feel like the Browns, when it comes to stuff like this, just get punished for sins of the past, especially the recent past where, I think a lot of people picked the Browns to win the division a couple of years ago and even at the beginning of last year. And the Browns ended up flopping like every time people pick them to go to win a division. So I think people are just hesitant on doing it. And they would rather vote on the more secure stuff, right? Joe Burrow, the 3 wide receivers they have there in Cincinnati, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I'm happy to see nobody went goofy enough to go Steelers there for first place because somebody always does it, no matter what the Steelers roster looks like. So we'll see how the division shakes out. It's not going to be a gimme to anybody, right? It wasn't a gimme last year. I mean, this came down to the last week of the season, the second to last week of the season for the Bengals to win it, and they only won 10 games to get it. So it's going to be another dogfight for the division again. We'll see what happens and how this shakes out. But it's going to be an interesting race for sure. I think Baltimore, Cleveland, and the Bengals are all going to be really good teams this year.
Now, Quincy, the Browns, they still have some weaknesses along the roster. Obviously, defensive tackle, unproven names there in the middle, as well as wide receiving core as well. When you look at this team, what weaknesses do you kind of identify? And, for you, how would you identify and address some of those positions as we head into training camp?
Right. So when you look at the roster, and we go position by position, it's easy to say this group's weak, this group's strong. But sometimes that's by, I want to say design, but that's a feature, not a bug, right? Like it's just what they would be willing to live with. When we look at the interior defensive line, we go in kind of panic because the names aren't that great there. But if you're the Browns, hey, you're thinking if they decide they're going to run up the middle like crazy, we'll just pinch our linebackers in and stop it that way. Or, if they want to run the ball a ton because they think our defensive line's weak, cool. You want to keep the football closer to Myles Garrett, we'll take that bet. You know what I mean? You want to run it towards Jadeveon Clowney, we'll take that bet. We'll think that we can win enough on that one, right? And that's how the scheme kind of makes up for the weaknesses and why certain schemes will allow for weaker position groups because you can just get away with them in certain schemes, right? The same thing goes on the offensive side of the ball, right? You kind of hope that Deshaun Watson covers up a lot of your wide receiver holes or that the running game opens up a lot of those wide receivers, right? Like you have weaknesses, but good teams tend to put their weaknesses in position to thrive because they can scheme away problems for those weaknesses, right? And I think that's what we're seeing with the Cleveland Browns, right? Every weakness you can point at schematically, they're doing something to address that and to make those guys' lives easier in the interior or at wide receiver. And that's why, that's why I think their weaknesses are absolutely there. You can take advantage of them if you're a good enough team, but why it's not something I think the Browns are panicking about, because I think they have enough tricks up their sleeve to be able to address those things.
Now, Quincy, former Cleveland Browns cornerback Joe Hayden, was released in 2017, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yesterday, put on his social media, got a brand new tattoo, and he decided to go with the split uniform, where Browns helmet, Steelers helmet, split jersey at that point for the new tattoo for Joe Hayden. Quincy, I got to say, man, when it comes to the split jerseys, I'm just not a fan, but especially in this case, man, you're doing the Steeler-Browns rivalry at the same time? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Joe's doing there. He's paying homage to both the teams that he played for, and I get it, but I wish he would have gotten 2 separate tattoos of him in the Steeler and the Browns jersey. Why did you have to merge them into one split jersey? And look, I get the split jersey if you got family on both sides of the team. You can't pick a favorite. I get it. You got to split the jersey, even though it'd be like TJ Watt on one side and then like Derek Watt on the other sometimes, right? But yeah, I understand. You got to get the split jersey. I get it. But come on, Joe. Come on, Joe. You ain't had to do this. You ain't had to do this. Like, you could have got a tattoo with you in an undescript football jersey and in the skyline of Cleveland and the skyline of Pittsburgh. Why would you merge the 2 most hated uniforms together and then make them one piece?
He's been on both sides of the rivalry. Like, you understand how big of a rivalry this is, and you do it anyway. Like you said, I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to that, man. You got to know better. You got to know better if you're Joe. Especially if you're trying to get a one-day retirement contract.
Yeah, what'd you say?
I said, especially if you're trying to get that one-day retirement contract or whatever to retire a Brown or retire a Steeler, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I get what he's doing, and I get what the thought process was. And look, and ultimately his body, he can get tattooed on it, whatever he wants. But it's just kind of a hilarious story to be that's kind of the perfect Joe Hayden thing, right? Like, I want to pay respect to everything that was in front of me, but then you got the split jersey, the Browns and the Steelers. Like, it's one of those things that's going to make nobody happy. But if it makes Joe Hayden happy, then that's the only thing that's really important, because it's on his torso, right? But it's just the split jersey, y'all. I'm not a fan of it. Stop going to games with split jerseys if you don't have family members on both sides of the team. I've seen fans do this before where they're like, I have an NFC team and an AFC team. Nah, dog. You pick one when you go to the stadium for whatever jersey you decide to wear. Don't tell me you're about to wear a split. By the way, also, Browns fans, I'm already right here about to patrol this. If I see any of you wearing a split Baker Mayfield jersey, we're going to have a problem. We're just going to have a problem.
See, and I was about to say it too. I'm glad you said it before I could. So, Quincy, thank you so much for joining me again. Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality. Make sure you go ahead and follow his stuff and go ahead and subscribe. Quincy, thank you so much for the time, my friend. Appreciate it.
No problem. You have a great day.
All right, thank you very much. Quincy Carrier, great stuff from him. Coming up next, Casey Kinnamon, Dawg Pound Daily, going to join me. Talk about a couple of Cleveland Browns on the NFL's all under 25 team, as well as an MVP case for a Cleveland Brown. We'll get into that coming up next right here on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and CBS Sports put out their NFL All-Under-25 defensive team for 2022. Two Cleveland Browns making that list. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker making the list, as well as Greg Newsome making the list there as well. And to talk about all of that, we bring in Casey Kinnamon of Dog Pound Daily. Casey, one, thank you for joining us. And two, Greg Newsome, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, again, that tag team in that NFL all under 25 from that 2021 draft class really seems to be paying off dividends, especially with the rest of that veteran group there on the defensive side as well.
Oh, yeah. Barry knocked it out of the park, that draft, just getting those two players. Those are two top, those are first-round talents, period. And if you look at that list, I mean, just some monsters. You got to understand that Chase Young is on the second team for pass rushers. I mean, it's just crazy talent in this league, a lot of young monsters. And look at the guys that are, ahead of JOK right now. You're looking at Micah Parsons and Devin White, Patrick Queen. And that's I do believe that JOK will join that group this season. I think he's going to be looked at in the same light. He's dynamic. He's a playmaking weapon on defense, and he's just now coming into the zone. And then conversely, you look at Greg Newsome, look at his rookie season. I mean, that's trial by fire. When you're the corner opposite of Denzel Ward, you're going to be tested. And the young man was, and he passed with flying colors. What's most impressive to me is that he trusts his technique. He's a guy that, doesn't get handsy, plays the position, stays patient, tremendous with pass breakups. He has the ability to, he does get beaten off a move. He has great, make-up speed. And what he was able to do on those shallow crossers, just cutting them down from just right from the jump. That's huge when you're playing teams like the Steelers who just utilize that kind of playmaking. It's Greg Newsome also, I don't know if he'll ever ascend to the all-pro talent that I think that JOK will, but he's going to make a name for himself in this league really quickly.
Well, and on top of that, too, when it comes to Greg Newsome, it's not like he's an older prospect either. He turned 21 in May, a week after he was selected. So, for him, he's still young. He's got plenty of time to stay on this list at this point.
Oh, yeah, they utilize that guardrail, get him in here young, develop him, and then, just recognize who you're going to re-sign and build with them so that when you get that second contract, you get their entire prime. And both those players, Greg Newsome included, is definitely included in that.
Now, sticking with Greg Newsome as well, he's part of that secondary, obviously. And Warren Sharp, Sharp Football on Twitter, he had the best secondaries for 2022. Cleveland Browns slotting in at number 4, right between the Baltimore Ravens, who added in, Kyle Hamilton, among others. And then you have the Chargers, who added in J.C. Jackson from the New England Patriots in there as well. Number 2, Buffalo, and then number 1, Green Bay. Browns sitting there at 4. You still have Grady Williams, who, again, had great performance last year. And then Martin Emerson, again, that first selection that they had in round 3, he's somebody who can kind of develop, again, if all things play out correctly. And, knock on wood, just no injuries there. But, he's somebody who can kind of develop and take his time. Casey, when it comes to, this unit in the secondary as well, it seems like there's a lot of potential for growth as well as, that youth in that back end.
And I think we need to touch on A.J. Green. He is a key rotational corner on the outside. It kind of frees up some players because what he can do on the outside. Now, I believe he does need to trust his technique more, but he always finds himself in position. And being an undrafted guy like he was, he put a chip on his shoulder, and he comes in, he competes hard when he gets his opportunities. And I think you'll see a huge uptick from what he had last year to what he gets this year, probably eating the greedy snaps quite a bit. And I do think we need to touch on the fact that Newsome's going to see a lot more opportunities in the slot, which I know he's sudden enough to do it, and he's going to be able to hold up in the pass game, but he's going to see a huge uptick in his run fits. So how does he hold up physically? Because as we know, we're probably going to see Denzel miss a game or two, possibly the same with Newsome. So these other guys are going to have to step up. You're going to have to see a development out of Emerson, and he's going to have to be able to do some inside, outside stuff. But just from an overall, the cornerback position is solid. They're young. They're all in their physical primes. It's very exciting. And I think that if Grant Delpit could take another step forward this year, that can really put the secondary over the top. And you could be looking at the premier unit in the league by season's end.
Yeah, and, Casey, the other part of that, too, is that when it comes to Emerson, getting a chance to see him a little bit at minicamp, he's got that big build. You see it with Greedy with the height, but, you could tell he's a little bit lanky. MJ Emerson, he's every bit of that 215 that you expect out of him on the outside, and he doesn't lose any of that athleticism while he's out there.
No, and he plays downhill. So I think that's where you may see him in the slot come in during running opportunities and kind of be able to fit gaps, because he's a big man, and he likes to play downhill. He's not going to turn his back to the quarterback very often. So I think they'll use him in that kind of overhang role. You'll see him more in the slot at first. And then eventually they can work him into outside, but they don't need to rush him into that because of the personnel they already have with Greedy and AJ, and then Denzel holding his spot down. So he'll be able to grow. They'll be able to kind of implement him and let him play to his strengths at first until he can get his feet under him.
Now, Casey, ESPN put out NFL MVP cases for 2022. And they decided to roll one out for Nick Chubb for the Cleveland Browns. And the comparison that they had was Terrell Davis in 1998. And basically saying that, again, that system back when Supernova, saying that we know that what Chubb is capable of executing, though he's managed to do it in 16 games as a pro. And that if the Browns run their offense through him for the sort of massive workload that Davis saw in 1998, and Chubb stays healthy for the entire season, we could see him follow in those same footsteps. Now, I know that it's a different game than it was back, in 1998. We didn't hit, Y2K at that point. But, again, seeing it at this point now in 2022, I know that Kareem Hunt's in the backfield, but Nick Chubb seriously can carry that workload, especially if Deshaun Watson has to miss some games this year.
Look, Nick Chubb is undoubtedly talented enough to be the premier back in this league, maybe even offensive weapon. He just is. But this regime has no interest in running him into the ground. They've kind of shown us that over the past 2 seasons. And the most carries Chubb's had over his 4-year career is 298 back in 2019. I don't think you're going to see Nick Chubb surpass that 250 mark this season or under this current coaching staff, especially if Kareem Hunt is healthy. And by contrast, if you look at Terrell Davis back in 1998, he had 392 carries to get those 2,000 yards. And that's just not in the card for Chubb, nor should it be. If Chubb would have played back in that era with his skill set, his size, athleticism, speed, and vision, no doubt he'd had 350 carries every year until they broke his body. That's the way the league was back then, and they would have rode that horse until it couldn't ride no more.
His carries
just the way the league's set up now, I don't think that you're going to see Chubb kind of get to those kind of numbers.
Yeah, his carry numbers might have looked like Derrick Henry's when he was back in high school with 500 per season. But, yeah. Casey, the other thing, too, is that Freddie Kitchens, former Browns head coach, he talked about Baker Mayfield, and he had this to say about Baker as an emotional leader.
Talk about emotional leaders, people that, wear their emotions on their sleeve. You've had the experience of being in the same quarterback room as Baker. Some of those things sometimes can be, liabilities in essence. Just kind of explain to us a little bit more of your insight into who Baker Mayfield is and how sometimes those passions, end up being a liability.
I don't know if I totally agree with that. I think, I think you're going to be one of 5 things in the world. You're going to be bad or average. I don't think anybody in that National Football League is that. You're going to be good or great, and that's what God gave you. You want to be elite. And the difference between good, great, and elite is sometimes the passion that you bring toward the game. So in saying that, I would say that's an attribute that he has. It's not necessarily a detriment.
Now, look, Casey, I know that at this point we can, say that Baker Mayfield has enough chips on his shoulder that we can call him a 7-Eleven at this point. But, when it comes to Baker Mayfield, I feel like, him saying that it's not a detriment for him to be that emotional type of a leader. I can understand that to an extent, but when he gets upset at fans booing him during the season last year, you can see where it can have its warts, especially in a situation like Carolina, when Matt Rule already is not only on the hot seat, the entire room is an inferno.
Yeah, passion can be an attribute, but when it gets misdirected, you know what I mean? That's when it becomes a detriment. And that's what we saw with Baker. He's going to be passionate the whole time. Now, it's not always directed at the right things. And when you start focusing on the wrong things and you kind of lose where you need to be in the moment like that, I think that definitely can be a detriment. And that's what we saw play over last year. Baker has a tendency to, it's never his fault. It's always something else, some outside external thing that's happening that's causing whatever's happening. And when you put your focus on that, it definitely takes away from your play on the field.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, more from Freddie Kitchens, as well as, is it time for the new look? Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. And Freddie Kitchens, former Cleveland Browns head coach, he was talking about Baker Mayfield and how Baker Mayfield had to go through the coaching carousel and the injuries in his time in Cleveland.
Baker Mayfield, clearly the narrative surrounding his career thus far has been he's worked with a lot of different head coaches, a lot of different offensive coordinators, and it was well documented, played with a partially torn labrum last season. How much of an impact do you think both of those factors have had on his career thus far?
I think it's definitely a factor when you start talking about different voices, different systems, different beliefs, philosophies, all that, all those sorts of things. Playing quarterback is kind of like you have to have the same vision and everything as your head coach and your coordinators. And when that vision sometimes changes, it's definitely a detriment.
And to talk about this, we bring in Casey Kinnamon of Dawg Pound Daily. And Casey, I know it was a factor when it came to Baker Mayfield, but at a certain point, something's got to give when it comes to Baker Mayfield. I think that's why we saw the move to Carolina and the move for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, absolutely. It came to a breaking point. He had a lot of coordinators, he had a lot of different voices. He did have injuries, but that's this league. That's the man's league. That's the NFL. Like, there's going to be things that happen. Can you adapt and overcome? And if you can't, you need to take yourself off the field. Physically, there was a point last year where he should have just said, "No, Moss, I can't do it. I'm hurting this team," and he refused to. He bet on himself, and ultimately, as far as his future in Cleveland, he lost. And it was time. He was done with the organization. The organization was done with him. I think it could have been handled better from both sides, but it is what it is. So. It's a new start now. He gets to go to Carolina and try to prove himself all over again, which, good for him. I think he's going to try to make the most out of the opportunity. But at the end of the day, the Browns have to do what's best for them. And what was best for them was moving on from Baker Mayfield.
Now, Casey, I know that we saw in Cincinnati earlier today the all-white uniforms now with the white helmets. And that got fans to thinking, and that got people to mocking up this new type of a uniform that we've seen here, and this being Nick Chubb and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the white helmet. And seeing it with the throwback jersey, I like that one a little bit better. I don't like that with the modern one. And I know that we've seen other images there to see that with the other current uniforms as well. Casey, I got to get your thoughts, man. What do you think about the white helmets for the Cleveland Browns?
Well, when it comes to the white helmets, there's definitely combinations of jerseys that it works with better than others. But I would honestly, if they were going to do that, go all white helmet, just like they were when they came into the league back in the late 40s. Go all white, lose the stripes just for the whites. I think that would be a really clean look and it would set them apart. And I think it would look better with the throwback jerseys if it was all white. Some of it gives me a little bit of college vibes. I see a little bit of Virginia Tech in some of those combinations. But what does it hurt? They came in the league wearing white helmets. I think it would be awesome to do a throwback in that sense and give them a little something they can switch it up from every now and again.
Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily. Check out his stuff on Dog Pound Daily. Casey, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. Appreciate the time.
Hey, it was awesome to talk to you again, Mac. You guys have a great day.
Same to you, Casey. Same to you. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us today at Sports4CLE. Special thanks to the guys in the back, Brian as well as Adrian. And coming up on tomorrow's show, we've got Garrett Bush, G. Bush from the Barbershop, 92.3 The Fan. He'll be joining me, as well as Brad Ward from Browns Wire. He also will be joining me tomorrow here on Sports4CLE. Have a good one, Cleveland. Take care.